Dive right in. Welcome to the analytics module webinar. We've been doing a webinar series over the last few months. This is a brand new module that we're releasing right now, which is super exciting. We've been working on it for the last number of months, really trying to ensure that you have your data at your fingertips. So the analytics module, it's a dashboarding and reporting tool that will allow you to create data visualizations and custom reports using your data from your site. It's going to be easier to have some of those visualizations when you think about who's going to be accessing the data and reading it. So when you think about different learning styles or different people in your organization, sometimes having it as a bar graph or a pie chart, it's going to be easier for them to understand the story that the data is telling, rather than looking at a massive Excel sheet. So this is a tool that allows you to make your dashboards, but also allows you to build custom reports so you can access and have very specific reporting built in there that you'll be able to then hopefully reduce the time you're spending on reporting for the ministry or for your funders. The way that we structure the module is going to be, there's going to be some agencies that have data people on their teams, and they're going to be super familiar with working with tables and doing more complex data analysis. They'll be able to get lots of value from this, but there's also going to be a lot of dashboards that we're creating that will be available for people that aren't as used to working with a data visualization tool. The reason we went with our end solution, which is Quicksight, there is a ton of online learning content that is available on YouTube just by Googling that will help teach you how to use the module and do some of the back-end data analysis rather than building a net new product that we would do all the coding for. So it's a way for us to be able to use a really robust solution to get in your hands and make sure that you're also enabled for success. For the back-end structure, you can see over here, we have all of the EMHware sites. We use a service called Fivetran to transport the data from your MySQL server, or the data stored on your site, over into Amazon Redshift. The data doesn't leave the country. It goes from Toronto to Montreal, and then it stays in Montreal, where the data centers are. It goes into Amazon Redshift, so that's where the data gets pooled. So it's called the data lake. The data stored in there, and then Amazon Quicksight hooks into that data lake to be able to access all the tables that are getting sent over from EMHware. All of these are very robust and very secure solutions, knowing that the data that is in the EMHware system and that you and your workers are putting into the system is highly confidential and very sensitive. So we went with very robust solutions that stay within our existing ecosystem. So for those that don't know, all of the sites are run on Amazon Web Services, so AWS, and we utilize the products that they have, that they support the most robust integrations with, and also ensuring that they are essentially signing off that their same privacy standards are going to be across the solutions in their suite. For our proposed future state, so we're just coming out of phase 1 into phase 2. So we're launching Quicksight with the role-specific links for login page. There'll be some pre-created dashboards in there, and we're working on a lot of the documentation pieces. So that work's been done. We're going to show you that work. We're beginning to onboard clients in this phase 2. We have a couple agreements already in place to build out some specific ministry dashboarding to help with data cleaning, as well as with one of the assessments that's part of the McMaster research projects that some of the child and youth agencies are using, which we're really excited for. We're going to launch the editing functionality. So when you're in there, you can go through, you can click through and change some of the filters and stuff already, which is great. When we are going into the allowing for custom report writing, so this is going to launch in mid to late April. This originally, for any folks that were on an earlier demo, this was originally in August. So we pulled up the date on this based on the amount of documentation the team was able to do. The functionality was always there. We were kind of holding it back until we had the right amount of documentation so people could utilize it. And then you'll be able to do some custom dashboard creation, and we're going to continue building out our data dictionary and documentation. As we move into phase 3, we're going to be adding in some of the EMHware reporting suites into Quicksight. So if you're looking at running a massive report, when you're running it in Quicksight, it won't actually slow down or put any load on your site. So you won't see any slowdowns or things getting caught up because someone's running a 5-year report with thousands of lines. And then we'll be completing the documentation for the entire system. And then ongoing, we're going to keep building out additional dashboarding suites. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for feedback to say, oh, it'd be really great if we had this. And then we'll be able to scope and build out those additional dashboards and release them to everybody. And it can be separate from our regular release cycles, which is fantastic. And then we'll be looking at doing additional integrations into EMHware. Right now, it's a bit of a separate product with a separate login. We want to make sure it's eventually integrated directly into the platforms that you're all in one spot the whole time. So as we jump into privacy, Quicksight allows for us to have row-level privacy. So that means that we can say someone can have access to this one specific row of data in this one table. Or we can say that they can have access to all of these tables, but not these other tables that might have PHI in it. So what makes that really important is if you have someone that, say on your finance team, should have access to the information that's in your contract module, they can have access to that, but then not have access to anything past client first name, last name, or client ID. So it allows us to really ensure that the privacy is at the core of the product. And we'll be rolling out the additional configurations as we go, as people need them. So we'll work with you as you sign up a new author, and we'll be like, okay, they can have access to these parts of the data set, but they can't have access to everything. When we look at the existing dashboards, there won't be any PHI in those dashboards. The information that'll be in there will be a client ID. So if you have a viewer going in, they'll be able to see a client ID. They can then take that client ID and search into EMHware if they need to do further analysis on why there could be an outlier or there's something weird with the data with that one client. And then if they have permissions to see that in EMHware based on the settings, they'll be able to pull up all the information for that client. Looking at some of the sample table documentation. So this is just for one table, and it's not everything in that table. There's quite a lot of columns in there, but this would be for the EMHware client table. You can start to see how we're mapping out the best way to show you what's included in that table and how it might show on the front end. So there are certain things that there might be a number in the database, but then there's also a corresponding number that's on what your clinicians can see that are fully linked, but they look very different. And so when we're looking at things like client ID and ID, it's both associated with the client. One of them's on the back end, one of them's on the front end. And based on what you're seeing, so if you're seeing client ID, this is the ID that's going to link together across a whole bunch of tables. But the ID is going to be what your front-end clinician would see. So if you're thinking about adding a filter, you might want to filter by the ID column name so that they can search by, okay, I'm looking for client 1234. They'd be using a filter associated with this. So we're really working to make sure that the documentation makes it easy for people to be able to utilize the system and be able to write some of their own reports and also understand why some of the filters and parameters on the existing dashboards are set up the way they are. So I spoke really fast to get through this part. We're going to jump into the demo right now. I know there's a couple questions and they're getting typed answers to right now. So let me switch my share and we will jump right into Quicksight. Perfect. So I've logged into the home screen of Quicksight. There's a specific link that takes us to our instance. I put in the password and email that I set up for my account that is specific to Quicksight, and it brings me into the homepage. So you can see there's a number of dashboards that are already in here, pre-created by the team. If we want to go and check out a couple of them, we can go in and look at things like client demographics. In here, it's going to pull and allow you to one, check to see if you have any outliers in your data. So there could be some errors where somebody clicked on the wrong thing, or they're like, okay, it's kind of weird. I wouldn't expect there to be a random person over in Brantford. So what we've done is we've loaded up a bunch of sample data, just kind of random data for clients, not clients, I should say, random data to help pull together some of these visualizations. And so if you're looking and say we have someone in London, you might not actually serve anyone in London. And you're wondering, okay, what if someone in London? Okay, I'm going to go and investigate that client ID and see if the information's correct. And that would be a good way to make sure you're cleaning your data and you're being able to analyze it correctly. And then once your data is all clean, you can then do further additional analysis. And you're like, I know what I'm going to somewhat expect from this. And it helps you do some of that gut check as you go. It's also going to show things like client age. So if you have a spectrum of child and youth clients, you can go and be like, oh, I have a lot of people that are in the program right now that are 15. Or there's a spike in this age group. Does that align with the clinical specialties that I have at the agency? And are there changes we might need to make in the future, or are there going to be needs that are being identified here that we can change some of our staffing, or what's our next hire going to look like? Moving over to the client contact. So if we want to look at the client contact, I've put in a filter for a specific worker. So we're going to look at worker 2459, and this will show you workers' names. We've just put in kind of random test names so that we can do some of these filtering. Right now, you can see I'm pulling data from fiscal 2022 to the end to 2023. So we're in Q4 right now. And I've allowed for all my programs. I'm looking for client contact and workload counts. All the methods are going to show and all the activities. So I can look through for this specific worker and see, okay, their workload is at 6% and their client contacts are at about 2,000. So the total hours are going to be 2,588 across 146 clients, with the split across each month shown on the bar graph. If I want to only look at my client contacts, I can click on that and it's going to apply that filter now across the rest of the charts here. So I now know that there are still 146. The actual contact hours are 2,438. And now I can go look at specific months to see how many contact hours were in that month. If I want to now go and look at the methods and the counts for each of the methods, I can see that it's predominantly face-to-face. So there's 11 that were face-to-face. There's some video conferencing, a couple of canceled or no-shows, a little bit of email, and some phone as well. So it gives you a great representation of, especially post-COVID, are you starting to see that shift that you saw originally to video conference? Is it starting to come back to face-to-face? Or are you predominantly staying at video conference and doing a lot more teleservices? I can also go through and see for those contacts, what were the activities that were selected? So predominantly counseling and therapy, brief intervention, family capacity, skill building and support, and then some coordinated access and intake. So it gives you a pretty good idea. If you start to see someone that shouldn't have an activity associated with the work that they do, it will show up in here and you can be like, oh, that's kind of weird. I'm not expecting to see that. You can go back and see, was it just an error that you can fix? Or is it like, no, they actually did that work and maybe it's starting to look at changing the scope of some of the programs. And then because I have it filtered down, you actually can't see this because it's all showing as contacts. So the workload's been filtered out. And then it's already filtered down to the specific worker. So I'll take off the filter of the worker. So I can click on here. I'm going to select all. And now we're going to look at, this is what it looks like, essentially fiscal year to date across the agency. So you had 17, 14 for clients. You can see how it's ramped through the year in the amount of sessions they've had and contacts. And you'll be able to start to look at an aggregate level across the agency where your workload and the contacts are happening. And then you can see these are now populating now that we're not just having your direct contacts. And I can go by worker ID, and you can start to see their splits across for client contact and workload. And you can do a quick view of that, and you can export it as well, either as a PDF or as a CSV. So if I'm just going to jump into the contact analysis, and then I'll actually hand it over to Hussein. So I won't go through all of our dashboards. I'll just click on the Quicksight up here into dashboards, and then contacts analysis. So you'll start to see we can do things by location. You have all the filters across the top, whether you're looking at roles, whether you're looking at program IDs, worker IDs, and you can start to play with the date parameters depending on your reporting. So we can start to see by month what are the locations that the contacts are happening in. And we can also go further down here and start to look at, are specific workers handling more contacts than others? So you definitely would expect that. And if you're looking at like a full-time staff versus your contract staff, part-time staff, you'd expect to see that there could be some large differentials based on the type of worker you have using the system. So we can start to look through here and figure out, okay, there's 60 programs that are included in this data. It's representing almost 22,000 contacts, number of group sessions, percentage of total contacts. There's about 4,400 of those are going to be groups. And then we can start to see contacts by program. So the highest utilization program is 188 and 241, and it goes down. So these would show your program names on the front end that you have to make it easier for you to see. We've just added in random numbers rather than coming up with program names for these columns. And then you can start to go down by activities as well. Once you get to a certain point, instead of having a million columns going down, we group things into other. So if I want to be like, you know what, I don't really know what's in other, it's showing us a pretty big bar in here, be the fourth largest bar, I can click on here and I can actually drill through it. So if I'm going to drill through, it's now going to tell me, here's the activity and here's the client ID associated with that activity based on the filters I have on the first screen. So I can see a lot of it 0 to 6 mental health and childcare. There's a lot of assessment has been selected, assessment 30 minutes. So you'll be able to go through pretty quickly and say, oh, those are the other programs that they might not be enough in as on their own to be their own column. But once you start to aggregate it, then you're like, okay, here's all the things that fall into other that are smaller activities that still represent quite a large amount of workload across your agency. So it pulled me into a new tab. I'm just going to go back to the main dashboard. So it brought me up to the top. We can scroll back down. At the bottom of each dashboard, when it's created by EMHware, we're going to put in information so that it helps you understand, one, where the data is coming from, and also some of the insights that you might be able to gather from it. So the group sessions are defined where the group checkbox is checked off in EMHware. So this is all to help people that, one, they might not be as familiar with our tables or some of the inner workings of the workflows of the workers at your agency, but they should be able to get a pretty good understanding based on the graphics here. So I'm just going to take a quick look through the questions and see if there's anything I can show. And then I actually have time to show one more dashboard before I hand it over to Hussein to look through talk through some of the differences between the writer licenses and the author licenses or the viewer licenses. So Chris, I'll be able to answer yours here. And I can also answer Dana's question. So this would be in addition to the report section right now. Long-term goal is to actually move all the reports into here. So we're going to be working actively towards that. How do we make sure that the analytics module becomes standard for everyone? We're just not quite there yet for it to be able to be rolled into the main platform. But our goal is to do that. When we look at face-to-face versus non-face-to-face contacts, we actually roll down here. Switch. Let me just switch back to. So if we're looking at the methods, this is going to pull from the method section within the actual contact. So if you make changes in the contact, it's going to be based from there rather than pulling from some other report in EMHware. It's pulling from directly from the actual tables. And then here's another example of, I'm just in a slightly different part of the platform that Hussain's going to show for the author part. So if you're wondering why there's some extra stuff showing here, that's the reason. But there'll be lots of explainers across the bottom. And if you hover, it'll show you if you can do additional functionality on here. Okay, so I'll just jump into the last dashboard. Actually, the second last dashboard. So if you want to start to go in and look at things like program ID, what I took was the largest program from the previous dashboard we showed, and I already pre-applied the filter. So I can go through and either look at a program by program basis across the 60 programs that we know are in there, or I can look at everything all at once, or I can look at a specific one. So if I want to look at the entire subset of data, and then again, it's already pre-populated to fiscal 2022, so we're in Q4 right now, it's going to show me that the average wait time in days is going to be 13.64 across all programs. There's currently 360 clients on the waiting list, and then we'll start to see waiting list versus total active program histories. So you can see, like, as a percentage, it's 10%. Rather than going like, oh, 360 or 400, it's a lot. It's going to be able to show you the comparison based on your agency size and the number of people you're already serving. You can also see, are there periods of the year where more people are joining your wait lists? So you can start to see some of the seasonality or the spikes. You can see there's going to be some weeks that are a lot quieter in the summer, maybe nobody came on. And then there's going to be periods of the year that are going to be much higher utilization. You're like, okay, how can I plan for that in the future? If you want to look at the top 15 programs, this is going to start showing you the counts, and it'll show you like, oh, okay, there's quite a big difference between two of our outlier programs, one of them being other. So we can always click into that and see what else is in other. But if you want to look at 188, which is the highest right now, it's at 78 clients on the list. We can go in and apply that filter. So I'm going to type in 188. I'm going to select that entry, and now it's only going to show me the data for that program. And I can look at specific workers within that as well. Or if I'm looking for a specific client, how long they've been waiting for, I can do all of those searches here. With the client IDs though, you need to know which client you're looking for. We're not going to give you a full list of all the clients on here. If you're looking for a very specific client, fantastic. This is going to be a great filter. If you're trying to click through and figure your way, it's not going to be using this filter, or at least to start. So if we're looking at there's 78 clients on the wait list, there's actually quite a few people on the wait list compared to active. So really helpful information to know, and also know that the average waiting time right now is almost 70 days. So that could be a way that, okay, we need to allocate more resources to this program. Or are there reasons why this program is always going to have a longer wait time? Is it addressable? Is it not addressable? You can also start to see the seasonality. Are there times where lots of people are joining or not? It's actually pretty consistent. There's no major peaks. So this is right here, it's the difference between 4 and 2. So not anything too major, but it's helpful to know if you're expecting that every time in June, it's going to be a big peak, or it's not. This is going to be that load of clients on the wait list by worker. So if you have one worker that has a really long wait list and there's a really short wait list for the other workers that are supporting that program, is there an opportunity to start to shift some of the clients that are on the waiting list to these other workers to reduce their wait times? Doesn't make sense in all cases. It might make sense in some though. And then again, back down to the bottom to see here's some of the dashboard insights and some of the documentation for quick glance if you don't want to pull up the full documentation and look at the tables. So I'm going to pop this over to Hussein. He's going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes just walking through the writer and the reader licenses and some of the analysis part, which is a different part of the platform that you just saw quickly when I was in a previous dashboard. And then we will pull up the pricing, walk you through the pricing structure, and then just open the floor for any questions, and we'll pull back up Quicksight if needed to be able to poke around and show folks what they need. So Hussein, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, perfect. So a little bit to just piggyback off what Sam said. So the authors, they're able to configure their own dashboards. They can manipulate their data, calculate their custom fields, and they can do their own, joins with different tables. As opposed to readers who can more or less just view dashboards. They can use the filters of the dashboards, and then they can download them. So just for a really good example of what the reader functionality had, it would be more or less what Sam was doing. He was using filters. He was, going through the dashboards, and if he wanted to, he could download the data in a CSV or in a PDF. But now I'm just going to walk over a little bit about what the authors are able to do. So this is what an analysis looks like. So Quicksight has two main terms it uses. So analysis is what you're doing when you're building out the dashboard, and then the dashboard is the final product of what we see, which is what Sam just showed. So to start off with the analysis here, this is what you would typically see. The left-hand side are essentially just the columns. So the way Quicksight has organized these is the first sort of word here is the name of the column, and then in brackets is the table. So address 1 is the column, EMH client is the table. And you're able to develop new visuals, and on those visuals, you can put in the columns you want. So for instance, in this particular visual, there's field wells, and on these field wells, you can see what data elements actually went into building out the columns, or if you're building out your own, this is sort of what you would do, is on the x-axis, the y-axis, and the values, you can put in which data element you want. So for the weighting, so the way I did it was I did the waiting list date, and I said, okay, I want to filter this by week, and you have the functionality of how you can aggregate it. You can do it by year, by quarter, by month, by week or day. And then from there, I said, okay, how many clients are we adding on a weekly basis? And that was a calculation I did myself, and I'll show a little bit later how to do those calculations. And similarly for other visuals, you can just add in the data parameters through the field wells. And also another really cool component is when we want to make our own visuals. There's a diversity of visuals we can select from, ranging from pie charts to line charts to pivot tables. There's horizontal stacked bar charts, and even tree maps. It really depends on what information or insights you need to extract before that sort of determines what visuals you're going to use. As well, we can add in filters, and there's a little bit of a cool feature here with filters, is that if I were to click on a particular visual, I can set up filters. Now, the cool thing with the filter here is if I were to edit this, I can actually select that I just want whether I want this visual to only work. Sorry, if I want this filter to only work on a particular visual, or if I would like this filter to work on all visuals. So you do have a little bit of diversity with how you set that up. As well, you can make your particular visual a drop-down, or you can make it very static where you actually have to put in a particular value. For this waiting list date filter, I've made it more static, so you actually have to put in a value. But if I were to look at another filter, such as, let's say, worker ID, this one is more of a drop-down where you can go through and select what you want and what you don't want. And here's sort of how you would do that. So there's that. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about insights. This is sort of, we could say, this is an AI feature that Quicksight has, and basically looks at data at trends and patterns within your data. So for instance, let me actually use this. This is a better site. And then if I were to use an insight here, this can speak to, okay, the highest week it has 49 clients, or the lowest week has no clients, and the growth rate over the last 4 weeks is this much percent. So this is a really cool feature if you're trying to extract just quick insights from your data, and this is available across all visuals, and you can add this to your sheet as well if you so choose to. And this will continue to update as your data continues to update across your visuals. There's that. I also wanted to talk about a really interesting bit, which was custom reports. So if we were to go out and create a custom report, the easiest way that we can do that is just by making a new table. So right here, we can just make a new table, and then we can just add in columns. So this is very similar as to how we do it in EMHware. It's a very similar process. You can just add in whatever data elements you want to visualize. You can aggregate them if you need to, and then you can just add them in here. I made a very, very basic report here. It's called Program History, looking at the status. And similar to how in EMHware we used to have parameters, there's parameters at the top where you can construct a report. Similarly, in Quicksight, we have filters. So in these filters, you can, select by a particular worker, select by a particular program, or the particular status of a client in a program. And then once you are able to generate a report, I'll do an example here. Let's say we only want to look at clients whose status is in eligible or new. So we only want to look at these clients. Now, once I've constructed this report, I have the ability to export this. So I'm exporting this now. Let's say I want to export this to Excel. My download is ready. And now once it opens up, I'll pull it up here. And here's my download. And then from there, you can do whatever you wish to as well. So aside from sort of the reporting and the analysis bit that's available, there's also a data manipulation component that I thought would be very interesting for folks to have. And this is where that comes from. And I'm also going to speak about the calculated fields and the custom calculations that people can do here. So over here, you have all the fields, all the columns, everything within your data set. And you can actually join tables. So over here, I've joined the program cycle table, which is the program history table, with clients, with workers, with programs. And then the client table I've joined to the EMH location table. So over here, the really cool component is you can determine what column you want to merge on. So obviously for the program cycle or the program history, merge on the client ID. And you can also configure which type of join you want. So inner join, left join, right join, or full join. So I know definitely some of the folks who want to be doing some more of the more complicated analysis will definitely enjoy that. And one of the really interesting components that Quicksight has is called Spice, where instead of writing out the queries, the SQL queries yourself, it'll actually just do the joins for you. And traditionally, in my experience, I found this to be much faster than writing your own queries. But if you're doing, let's say, like significantly complex analysis and you want to write your own queries, you do have the option of doing that, and you just have to click on direct query, and you can do that. So before we close out, I just want to speak a little bit about calculated fields. So in a calculated field, what you can do is you have your particular data, and you're able to do, let's say, SQL functions on them. So I'm going to start with something over here. So I can concatenate people's names, for example, right? And there's all these different functions that are available. I can average out a particular value that's in a column. So let's say there's a column which has the list of the number of clients that are present in a contact. So now I can just average this out if I so choose to. I just right here, and then I can put in the particular column, and it'll give me the average of whatever it is. And this is really, I found this to be particularly helpful when folks are constructing analyses that are a little bit more complex, or elements where they want to have very custom and specific calculations for themselves. And yeah, that is it for me, folks. If there's any questions that I have not addressed, I'm going to take a look at that right now. So Sam, I'm just going to be passing this. Oh, sorry, I just saw this. Are you able to demonstrate how to join program history to contacts? Yep, we can do that as well. So the way that the joins work is we would need particular tables that can map. So to program cycle and contacts would probably be mapped across across contacts because they both have that contact component to them. So if I want to activate, I'm just going to do a live sort of example right here. Is I can select from my data sets. Oh, sorry, from my data source. And this is the database I'm using is the program history. So what I would actually do here, sorry, I haven't actually configured this data set to have the contact, so I can't do it. I can't do the example on this particular one. But what it would basically be was that I would just add it through the data set over here, and then I would type in EMH contact. Once I do that, I can once I add in the EMH contact, I can configure on what particular parameter I want them to merge. Once they're merged, I can configure the type of join, and you can do it that way. Just unfortunately, I don't have it on this particular data set, so I'm not able to right now. Let me see any other questions that I can answer. But yes, I think those are the questions that I can answer on here. And Sam, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, so just moving over to the pricing. The way that the pricing works, and I'm going to be very transparent about just how the pricing works on our side as well. Every expense that we're invoiced for doing the analytics module, so it's Fivetran, Redshift, Quicksight, is based on utilization. So every row that is updated, so say you make a change to a name or you save something, that's an updated row. We would then get billed for that updated row. So what we've done is we've looked at what's the average based on certain sizes and then done the costing based on that. So the base, we've segmented it the same way that the rest of our pricing is. So there's the light size, the standard size, the pro size, and the elite size. That's based on the number of regular EMHware licenses you have. So if you have 20 workers on EMHware, you'd fall into the standard pricing. If you have 85, you fall into pro. If you have 5, you fall into light. And that's all based on the expected utilization that your agency would have of the system. So in the base platform offering, there's the data storage, the transfer of the data and the daily updates, and then one viewer license. So everything you need just to get this up and running. That's going to be included in this amount here. Okay, so if you're looking to have more viewers, this is the annual license cost for a viewer. Say you purchase this, say you renew on April 1st, so a lot of folks do, and then you purchase something in October, this will be prorated. All of this expense is prorated based on, along with any module you buy or any license you buy, it's all prorated based on your renewal date. So if you buy partway through a year, we're going to tell you this is the quote because we always quote an annual. Then your invoice would only have the prorated amount to get you to your renewal. And then the last one is the writer license. So this is the one where you get full functionality to be able to create reports, do the data work. Usually most agencies, even if you're a really large agency, you might only need 2 or 3. Small agencies, you might not get as much value if no one has the skills currently, but maybe they're going to learn. So then it might make sense in a little bit once they get more familiar with the software. You don't need usually 20 or 30 writer licenses. These would just be for the folks that are actually going to build new reports or build dashboards. The viewer licenses, you might need a few more of those. So my recommendation when I've been chatting with any of our clients that I've been speaking to about the module is buy what you need to get started, and then you can always add in the future. So if you're finding, great, we're getting a ton of benefit from this, and these 3 other managers would really benefit from that, then you just get it for the people that are actually going to use it. I do find a lot of people really like to use it up front This with any analytics, they're like, yes, look at all the pretty graphs. But then they might be like, okay, I used it for a week and a half, and now I'm not really going to check it because someone else actually presents me those reports. So the way to kind of make it the best bang for your buck and make your agency dollars stretch is just really think about who's going to actually need those to access the viewers, because they can always pull out PDFs and share the report more broadly. You're just going to want the people that actually will be looking, using the parameters, and would need that dynamic access to data. For large organizations, because there's such a spectrum for the amount of data that's being used, if someone has 100 licenses or 1,000 licenses, we do it quote by quote, and we have a quoting calculator that spits out this is how much it should be based on the expected utilization. And that's done in two methods, one by the amount each license should contribute for utilization, and the other one is based on the number of the amount of data that you have in your database that's being used regularly, rather than all of your whole historic database. There's just two different ways, and it kind of looks at which one makes the most sense. So that is the pricing component.